Right out of the box, the Sony WF-1000XM6 sounds decent, but it's not perfect. There's a certain hollowness to vocals, and the mids also sounded a bit too bright for my liking. Now, if you checked my full review, you can see how different it sounds from the previous model, the WF-1000XM5. So I decided to tweak it with its very capable 10-band graphic EQ, and the result is a setting which I call the Singapore Spring preset for the WF-1000X6. It's a crisp, punchy setting that brings vocals into sharper focus, and it also improves the airiness in the soundstage compared to the default EQ setting. Now, as I walk through the process of how I arrived at this particular EQ, I hope that those of you who don't have any experience working with graphic equalizers can learn something, and in the process create your very own custom EQ for the Mark 6 that works for you. To me, I've already arrived at the best setting for the XM6 earbuds, but depending on age and listening preferences, you might think otherwise. So buckle up, and if you want more content from me about the WF-1000X6, which includes tracking any changes with each firmware update from Sony, get subscribed and tap the bell button to stay notified. Now, before even attempting to change the settings, you need two things. First, you need a point of reference. So select some music that you're very familiar with, and as you go along making the changes, try to listen out for the differences. And second, you need to know what those numbers on the graph mean. Don't worry, I will explain these numbers while making my own adjustments, so feel free to make those adjustments on your own as we go along. And I recommend making these changes on Custom 2 setting because it's easier to toggle between Custom 2 to off and compare the differences between them. In fact, try playing some music now, then toggling between off and a flat Custom 2. You'll notice that actually the off setting sounds very different, and it even sounds louder than Custom 2. That's because the off setting has its own EQ preset, and the one labeled Custom 2 is the actual flat EQ setting. Okay, let's toggle back to Custom 2, and let's start on the left side from 31Hz to 250Hz. This, my friends, is the bass region. Sub-bass from 31Hz to 63Hz, mid-bass at 125Hz, and high bass at 250Hz. Now, do note that any adjustment at 250Hz will also affect the mid-range, so keep that in mind. What I did was I increased the sub-bass at 31Hz to +3 and 63Hz to +4 because I want to give bass notes more gravity. And then I increased the 125Hz to +1 to add some tightness and punch to the bass. Next, I decreased the 250Hz dial to -1. Why? Because 250Hz is actually the midpoint between bass and mids, and I wanted to create some separation so the bass sounds tight and clean but doesn't bloom over into the mids. Now, from 500Hz to 4 kHz, we have the mid-range frequencies, and this affects vocals as well as most sounds in general, like musical instruments and sound effects in movies. But when tweaking the mid-range, I recommend using music with vocals as a point of reference. Why? Because humans are naturally more sensitive to changes in voices, which is why we're so good at detecting shifts in tone. We can tell when someone is angry or happy, just depending on the way they're speaking, right? So here we have the low mids at 500Hz, which affects the fullness and body of vocals, 1 kHz affecting the loudness of vocals and instruments, and 2 kHz affects the crispness or sharpness of vocals. For me, I kept 500Hz at 0 and decreased the 1 kHz and 2 kHz dials to -2. Why? Because I found that to be the best way to temper the brightness of vocals on the WF-1000X6, which also made it sound more focused in the vocals and less brassy. 4 kHz is what's known as the presence dial. It adjusts the clarity and detail of vocals and instruments to make them sound more or less obvious in the soundstage. But be careful, too much can make everything sound too harsh, while too little can make instruments and vocals sound too distant. I personally set it to -1 because I prefer to have vocals a little less harsh without it being too recessed in the soundstage. We also have the treble dials at 8 kHz and 16 kHz. These adjust the brightness and airiness of the whole sound in general, specifically the brightness and crispness of instruments at 8 kHz and airiness and transparency at 16 kHz. Now, if you feel that your sound is dull and veiled, kind of like this, dull and veiled, you need to increase these frequency bands. If it's too bright and annoying, decrease it. For me, the WF-1000X6 on flat settings sounds way too dark, so there's a lo-fi quality to it which didn't quite satisfy me. So what I did was I pumped up both dials, 8 kHz to +2 to give instruments more sizzle, and 16 kHz to +6 or maximum to expand the air and transparency of the soundstage. Now, some people may not like it at +6 because perhaps they're too sensitive to higher frequencies. If so, you may set it to +3 or lower. For me, +6 gives the best airiness and openness in the Mach 6's soundstage. Now, if you followed along all the way because you're a legend, you would have arrived at my Singapore Spring custom EQ for the WF-1000X6, which you can get by scanning this QR code or clicking on the link below. Also, do follow my Instagram in case I upload a new custom EQ for the XM6 earbuds. But I would describe this Singapore Spring EQ preset as having a crisp, punchy sound that brings vocals into sharper focus and vastly improves the airiness in the soundstage compared to the default EQ.
Got a man who holds me down. You grinding and I don't know how. I guess the soft life made me act right. Big boss way you make me feel so at ease. Independent, but I follow your lead. Ain't no games we play for keeps. You got the ring, so tell me, Papa, what do you need? In the morning when you get dressed, Zeus in the evening if you feeling stressed. Tough by your decisions, I trust, 'cause you only want the best for us, baby. I'll be friend on the weekend when we hanging out. A lover on call, boy, I make a vow that you're my number one priority. Just keep giving me all your love. Don't stop giving me all your love. I'm sitting in the palm of your hand. Your wish is my
To compare their sound quality to other earbuds, go to louandwireless.com/sound samples. But what do you think about this setting? Or do you have another setting that you want to share? Let us know in the comments. What I want to do is I want to make this video a hub for everyone's custom EQ presets. So be sure to contribute your custom EQ below. Thanks for watching, smash like and share, and get subscribed for more videos about the WF-1000X Mark 6. Also, click here for my full review of the Mark 6 earbuds compared to the Mark 5 and the hottest earbuds in the market.